Hey, First Things First listeners, before we start the show, I wanted to tell you about our brand new Fox Sports app and website, foxsports.com, reimagined for the modern sports fan. Go ahead, download the new app right now. You don't even have to pause this episode. Every day on the new app and website, you'll see the top stories in sports, plus a rich world of written content, videos, social media, and analytics to give you a 360-degree view of the most important stories of the day. Streaming live TV has never been so easy or elegant. Every Fox Sports game, including all pregame and postgame shows, as well as the televised version of this show, just a click away. For the extra invested fan, we also go deep with real-time wagering lines, trending prop bets, win probability, and key player projections. So download the new Fox Sports app or visit www.foxsports.com. Now let's start the show. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. Jenna Wolfe, Nick Wright, Brandon Marshall, Kevin Wildes, and man, what an absolute gift the NFL gave us last night. Best Monday night game, probably the best football game I've seen in a really, really long time. All right, let's not waste time. Brandon's excited. Let us get right into it. Ravens and Browns, Monday Night Football from Cleveland. Whether you think Baker would outplay Lamar or Lamar would outplay Baker, you would be right. Lamar had 3 touchdowns. Baker had 3 touchdowns and a pick. Lamar had to leave the game with cramps, came back for a wild back and forth fourth quarter. And then the game would come down to a Justin Tucker field goal to finish it. But I mean, not before we saw a little bit of absolutely everything on the ground, in the air, things that upset Nick's betting line. We had it all. In the end, it would be the Ravens coming out on top with the win. Here's head coach John Harbaugh after the game.
With all the things that went on in this game, the timing like you're talking about, that right there, I mean, if you wrote a movie about this, people wouldn't believe it. They would say it could never happen. Reality is stranger than fiction, or whatever that saying is. That's kind of what it is here. I mean, it's crazy.
All right. Well, Nick, Baker showed up last night. We wondered if he could on the big stage, but Lamar was outstanding. He came off the COVID list, came back out of the locker room in the fourth quarter to do this and get this team back in it and get them the win. Who was more impressive, though, last night? Baker Mayfield or Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, I hate to start the show with a disagreement, but I did not think Lamar was outstanding. I thought that Lamar showed again that he is the most dynamic running quarterback the league has ever seen. But if you went into this football game with serious concerns about the Ravens' ability to pass the football, the 61 yards he had up until there was a minute left in the or 3 minutes left in the football game when he came back on the field didn't exactly allay those concerns. And for Baltimore, their defense, I thought, played the worst game I've seen it play in 3 years. Now, maybe part of the reason the defense played so poorly was because Baker Mayfield was cooking. And can we please, finally, America, put some respect on the man's name? Oh, I want to see him have a signature win. Okay, well, so last week he has the best first half that any player has had in the NFL all season. I'm sorry, Jenna. Go ahead, please.
No, I was just waiting for the signature
Jenna,
win. Go ahead. You go.
No.
Sorry, I apologize. I didn't know my mic was on.
No.
I didn't know my microphone was on. I was just waiting for the signature win.
It's good.
Go ahead, sorry.
It's good. Okay, so that was last week when he had the best first half that any players had in the league all year. And then it was, well, I want to see him in the fourth quarter, down 2 scores. Oh, okay. Can we show what Baker Mayfield did? Because he did make one big mistake. He threw a pick. So how did Baker respond after throwing that pick? Do we have that graphic? Because I think he played perfectly. I think he had 3 touchdowns, 2 throwing, 1 rushing, including a 47-second drive with less than 2 minutes remaining to tie the football game. Then Justin Tucker did Justin Tucker things and the Ravens win. But last night, the better quarterback on the field, without a shadow of a doubt, was Baker Mayfield. Now, his team did not win, but when they were winning 13-10 because of the defense, we said those wins, they won, but he didn't play great. He was outstanding last night against a team that annihilated them in week 1. And it shows massive growth for him and for the team. So to me, clearly, Baker was the more impressive quarterback last night.
Totally disagree with you, Nick. Lamar Jackson did what Lamar Jackson does. Like, this was reminiscent of the 2019 Lamar Jackson. This is the reigning MVP. We were waiting for him to flash like this. We were waiting for a game where he showed his brilliancy and his genius on the field. We know why Lamar Jackson isn't throwing the ball and why he's not putting up huge numbers. I've been talking about it all year. That's Greg Roman. Now, Lamar Jackson, he missed 2 big throws. He missed one to Andrew, and he missed another to another wide receiver. 2 big plays. Yep. Other than that, Lamar Jackson played the game that we're accustomed to seeing. 2019. This is what we've seen Lamar do week in and week out. It's like watching Friday Night Football. You go to a high school game, and there's always 1 or 2 players that stand out to you. There's no names on the jersey. It's just like, man, who is this kid? If I'm a scout out there last night scouting these guys, I'm like, man, Baker Mayfield balled. Lamar Jackson balled. Who are these kids? Now, do you really want to talk about it, though, Nick? Like, you just threw it out like, you tried to twist the stats and you tried to change the angle a little bit, but that pick is significant. We've seen Baker Mayfield go for over 300 yards again. We've seen him flash before. But ball security is job security, yours and mine. We've been talking about it. That's the reason why they lost the game. So if you want to crown him as some type of hero quarterback that played well in the loss, they lost because the biggest indicator in winning and losing the National Football League is turning the ball over. And he turned the ball over. Yes. He saw that linebacker get underneath the route, and he stared it down, and he threw the ball anyway. Okay. That's what Baker Mayfield does. That's the reason why they lost. And that's the reason why I continue to stand on the table and say, look, Baker Mayfield is not the face of the franchise for the next 10 and 15 years until he fixed that problem. Has he played well? Has he eliminated distractions off the field? 100%. But he can't do this in the biggest moments in ball.
Right. And he's not going to be a guy who throws 0 interceptions a season, because that player has never existed. He did go 187 pass attempts without an interception, but that was a really bad one. But to say that's the reason they lost ignores what happened in the 4th quarter of that football game. After that play, they took the... Oh, yes, Brandon, I am aware they lost the game. I promise I watched. But after that play, they took the lead. After that play, when the Ravens then went down and scored, he drove them down to tie the game. In a game where his team scored 42 points, 21 in the 4th quarter, including a go-ahead 4th quarter drive and a game-tying 4th quarter drive with 1 minute remaining, to say a 3rd quarter interception is the reason they lost the game, and to say Lamar, that was not MVP Lamar. MVP Lamar
that was MVP Lamar. Any athlete watching that game last night would say this is one of the best athletes I've ever seen. We know Lamar Jackson. Yes. That's the same storyline. We know he's not going to throw for 300 yards. And I'm telling you the reason. The reason why is because there's no continuity in their offense. Lamar Jackson is who he is right now
Brandon, last year they had the same offense, and when he won MVP, you're right, he wasn't throwing for 300. But he was throwing for over 200 a game. And so last night, when he's got 80 yards passing through 3.5 quarters and finishes with 160, that was not the way he won the MVP. He's not going to be 300 a game, but he wasn't 160 a game either.
Like, if we're going to be, again, let me ask you a question.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you a question, Nick. All right, so you want to highlight Baker Mayfield. Baker was great. They lost the game. The last I remember, it's about winning and losing. Like, do we really want to crown these guys? If we do, if it's about, look, he played well, then tell me who gets the game ball. Who in the Cleveland Browns locker room gets the game ball?
Nobody gets the game ball because they lost. And Wilds, I want to let Wilds, maybe I'm living in a house of mirrors, but correct me if I'm wrong, Wilds. When the Browns were on a 4-game winning streak, playing in windstorms and rainstorms, and Baker was throwing for 110 yards, Was the conversation on this show, doesn't matter, they won. Baker gets the game ball, doesn't matter. Or was it, we need to see him do more? And so, like, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe it's just been, if the Browns win, Baker played great. If they lose, he played terribly. That's not quite how I remember it. But you be the
let me tell you. Let me remind you. No. Let me remind you. Sorry, Wilds, but let me remind you, Nick. What's the story? The story is, when is Baker Mayfield going to throw for over 300 yards? When is Baker Mayfield going to be the reason why they win and not the run game? Kevin Stefanski. Well, they lost last night, Nick. They lost last night. Yes, he's done it twice. He's done it twice in the season, Nick. He's done it twice in the season.
Well, the three touchdowns
their recipe
against
for success is running the ball and playing good defense. Yeah, Cincinnati.
Like
we know he
Baltimore's
beats on the Cincinnati Bengals. He beats on the Jacksonville Jaguars.
So
we wanted to see him do this against the Baltimore Ravens. So I'm reminding you what the conversation was a couple weeks ago.
Wilds,
Let's see him do this against Baltimore and the Pittsburgh Steelers. He lost. Do it in a win. You lost. Nobody's going to remember this next year. Nobody's going to remember him playing lights out against the Baltimore Ravens because he lost the game.
Okay.
We have hours upon hours to continue to discuss, and we will, I promise you, Wilds, get you in here, but we got to switch gears to talk about the MVP award. Can Aaron Rodgers still steal it away from Patrick Mahomes, just to stress Nick out a little bit more this morning? That's next. This is First Things First.
What's up, First Thing First listeners? It's your boy Shay Sharp, co-host of FS1's Undisputed. I wanted to tell you about my new podcast, Club Shay Shay, where we always do something before two something. Each week, I sit down with a guest for a drink and conversation, and as host and proprietor of Club Shay Shay, I welcome in esteemed guests such as Snoop Dogg, Floyd Money Mayweather, LeVar Ball, Isaiah Thomas, just to mention a few. Whether I'm talking to an athlete, a musician, an actor, or a lifelong friend, Club Shay Shay is a place where people share inspiring and motivational stories about their journeys to prominence. The new episode drops every Monday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to Club Shay Shay now and make sure you never miss a new episode. Now, back to First Things First.
Let's talk some Green Bay Packers now. It's been a great year for these guys. Matt LaFleur could be Coach of the Year. His team is now the NFC's top seed. Aaron Rodgers could be MVP. He was nearly flawless on Sunday. And the remaining schedule, Panthers, Titans, Bears, well, it's not terrifying. LaFleur knows just how well his quarterback is playing right now. Take a listen to what he had to say.
I think anytime you have just a group of players like we have, especially our quarterback, a guy of his caliber who, without a doubt in my mind, is should be the front runner for the MVP. I mean, he just does it consistently every time we go out on that field. It gives you a lot of confidence that you're going to come out with a victory.
Yeah.
All right, all that being said, Mahomes is still the favorite, Brandon. Mahomes is still the favorite ahead of Rodgers in the MVP race. But, Brandon, is the door still open for Rodgers to come in and steal this away from Patrick Mahomes?
Is it open? It's wide open. It's 50-50 at this point. Look, let me speak Nick Wright's language, okay? So, look, a couple weeks ago, I revealed this graph just to highlight a few things that I was trying to talk about. And Patrick Mahomes, I appreciate you responding to me last week. Look, I have a job to do. I love you, buddy. You're phenomenal. You can potentially go down as the greatest quarterback of all time. But right now, this is 50-50. So let's look at this graph. The first graph that I did, let's take a look. So if you look at this first graph, this is what I said. You know, Russell Wilson was leading the way. And then, Nick, this is critical information. Russell Wilson just started throwing pick after pick after pick, and I think it was the Arizona game where he threw multiple picks in one game.
Yep.
So now you had to take him from being in front of the jet ski to being on the tube. And if you know anything about being on the tube, it's really wild back there. At any moment, you can take off. So that was Russell Wilson, and we had Patrick Mahomes leading. But now you have Aaron Rodgers that has now taken over the jet ski because of what Russell Wilson did. He threw multiple picks. You can't lead and be in the front of the jet ski if you throw 3 picks in one game and give up the longest sack in NFL history. Patrick Mahomes will tell you that, Nick.
Wow.
You can't do it. And then you have old Derrick Henry sitting right there, Wilds. And I know you love Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry sitting there. If he finishes with 2,000 yards, he should be the MVP. And then you have Josh Allen and Big Ben just sitting out there saying, guys, wait for me. Wait for me. This is how it pans out right
I thought
here.
that was Christopher
Load
Pratt.
bearing.
Yeah.
Wilds, I want to get your take on this because I feel badly. Brandon and I yelled at each other in the first segment. Old buddy, America's favorite rapscallion, Kevin Wilds, didn't even get to give his take. So I'm going to pause mine. Kevin Wilds, you go, please.
No, you know why you're pausing yours, because I agree with you. Your propaganda, your Chiefs propaganda that has infected my son has now infected me. I think
So
that Mahomes
transparent.
is obviously the MVP. And I actually think it's unfair, Nick, that he should even have a bigger lead, but I think he gets penalized because the Chiefs are so good. Because Travis Kelce might be Offensive Player of the Year. Because Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid are geniuses. Because Tyreek Hill is the fastest player in the NFL and doing backflips. I think it all hurts Patrick Mahomes. But Brandon, you talked about the 30-yard sack and the 3 interceptions. When you watch that game, you're like, this guy's the best. Even though he's making mistakes, they're still impressive mistakes. Like the 30-yard sack, I'm like, wow, that's impressive. I'm going to argue that the 30-yard sack actually helped his MVP case. He's like, he's doing things I've never seen before. He's that confident. So, Nick, I appreciate you passing me the ball here, but I'm going to pass it right back to you. I think Mahomes is obviously the MVP.
Nick.
So I am actually...
Nick, sorry. I'm sorry to do this,
Brandon.
Nick.
Yeah, go.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I just want
go
you,
ahead.
because I think it got lost with the graphic. I just did what you did, right? When Russell Wilson, when he lost the MVP race, right? When he threw it three picks versus the Arizona Cardinals, that's all I did. I laid that up for you. Patrick Mahomes, he just threw 3 picks. That's why I have Aaron Rodgers now leading. So I was really going off of your take a couple weeks ago.
No. I get it. And by the way, I'm not even as strong as Wilds that Mahomes is clearly the MVP. Right now, with 3 weeks left, I think Mahomes is the leader. I think Brandon's jet ski is wrong. I think Mahomes is the leader. But I think it is close because, as people know, because of my just lifelong commitment to take integrity and the fact that I really just use this television show as a vehicle to audition to various leagues to actually get votes I so clearly deserve, I last year refused to say LeBron was the NBA's MVP because the numbers said it had to be Giannis. So I take this very seriously, even though it's a make-believe vote that no one will give me. So when you look at the numbers, completion percentage, yards per attempt, and turnovers, they are dead even. Mahomes is killing him in yards, and Rodgers is ahead substantially in touchdowns and interceptions. Both teams are #1 in their respective conferences. Granted, the Packers have 3 losses to the Chiefs 1. So why do I have Mahomes ahead instead of it being a coin flip? It is because of that same thing about the multiple turnovers. But the important qualifier is this. When Russell Wilson had his multiple turnover game, he wasn't able to overcome it. The Packers have 3 losses this year. 2 of those losses, Aaron Rodgers has turned the ball over multiple times. To the Colts, he threw a pick and he fumbled. In the Tampa game, that game turned on his 2 mistakes. Mahomes has 1 bad game this year. And in that game, he led the Chiefs to a 20-point third quarter and a 20-point lead en route to a comeback victory. So if Russell Wilson had those turnovers back when he was still in the conversation against Arizona, but then they had won the game in overtime, instead of him throwing the pick to lose the game in overtime, it wouldn't have hurt him as much. Right now, the deciding factor to me is this. Both Rodgers and Mahomes have had 1 game they would really, really want back. The Tampa game for Rodgers, the Miami game for Mahomes. Mahomes was able to, after having a horrific first quarter with 2 picks and a 30-yard sack, still throw for nearly 400 yards, 2 touchdowns, leads team to victory. Once Rodgers threw those 2 first-quarter picks, he and his team folded. What'd they score in that game? 10 points? So to me, that's the distinguishing point. But Mahomes has no nationally televised games left, Jenna. Rodgers has Carolina and then Sunday Night Football against the Titans, a terrible pass defense on national TV. Rodgers absolutely could still win it, but despite the 3 picks, I think Mahomes is the leader by a hair right now.
Yeah, and then they have Chicago, the Packers after that, so another chance for him as well. All right, back to last night's game now. Lamar, Baker, Lamar, Einhorn, Finkel, take your pick. Both played outstanding. Only one winner, though. We got this game for you next. First things first. Last night, Lamar Jackson had to leave the game in the fourth quarter with bad cramping, but he came back to lead the Ravens to victory. It was a wild one in Cleveland. Reigning MVP ended up with 3 total touchdowns and about 300 awesome plays. Brandon, Lamar Jackson's performance last night was blank.
Retro Ravens. I mean, we got to go way back to last year. This is how he won the MVP. Nick doesn't think he played well. I think he played amazing. I thought he was a magician in the pocket, elusive, athletic. He was the best player on the field. We know why he's not throwing for 300 yards. Do we want to continue to ignore that conversation that this offense is just not built for a guy to throw the ball? No chemistry, no continuity. We can go back to Colin Kaepernick and Greg Roman in San Francisco. He came out hot, and then what happened the year after that and the year after that? His numbers started to decrease. That's the reason why. Did Lamar Jackson miss 2 big plays last night? Absolutely. But this guy was the best player on the field last night. This is retro Ravens going back to last year.
So I thought it was storybook. And by that, I mean this. You read, great fables and tales. You know what the story very rarely is? Your hero has nothing but success and great things happen from beginning, middle, and end, and then the book's over. No. You know how storybooks go? Struggles, bad times, moments of peril. Oh. And then when you think all is lost and Trace McSorley is out there trying to run a 2-minute drill, your hero comes out from the back and has his best moment yet. Brandon's right. I didn't think Lamar was very good for the first 57 minutes of this game. But that play right there saved the game. And then after Baker drove back down the field, Lamar made 2 very good plays to get Justin Tucker in field goal range. So to me, it was a storybook finish for the reigning league MVP, Wilds.
Yeah, I went with Captain Sully. Like, you can be happy with the final result and a little bit stressed out about how you got there. Look, Lamar had 11 completions. Mark Andrews caught 5 balls. This was a huge play, but Lamar had to scramble for 24 yards until he finds somebody. So I know you're going to be like Brandon, but Wilds, that's what makes him so dynamic. Totally agree. But Captain Sully landed the plane in the Hudson River, and everyone's like, great job. And I think after the dust settles, you're like, was that really that great? It feels like we got some flaws in the system here. Lamar did a great job,
Captain
but I still would be a little bit stressed about how it happened.
Captain Sully slander? Wow!
No,
I love
That's
it.
the hottest take of the year.
It's the
hottest take of the year.
Hang on.
Sully slander? No, it wasn't.
We got to jump to the Cleveland side of
It was a funky
this.
situation.
Baker Mayfield, guys, threw for 343 yards and 2 touchdowns, ran 1 and 2. But he also had a costly pick in the third quarter with the Browns trying to get back in the game. Brandon, Baker Mayfield's performance last night was blank.
Ascending. Nick, you may be shocked how I go, which angle I take right now, but he's ascending. That's the truth. Look, before the game, leading up to the game, he handled the media well. There was no bulletin board material. That's what we want to see out of Baker Mayfield. He's been doing that all year, been handling the media better. In the game, he had poise. His demeanor on the sideline was amazing. He knew he was in a heavyweight matchup, and he handled it like a champ. And then after the game, I loved his demeanor with the media again. Baker Mayfield is ascending, but the reason why he hasn't arrived is because he lost the game and he threw a pick that cost his team the game. So he is ascending. I like what I'm seeing, but he needs to continue to do it.
Yeah, listen, guy's throwing way too many picks. He's now thrown 1 pick in his last 205 pass attempts. Obviously, you can't win that way, except for the fact every other quarterback in the league would love to do that because they've all thrown more. But my answer is endorsable. And I say endorsable because even Brandon Marshall begrudgingly is kind of endorsing him, but also endorsable because, you know, I was checking out Baker Mayfield's list of endorsements. You know what's not on there? Any type of beverage. So then I was like, hey, who's Gatorade got as an endorser these days? They used to have Eli and Peyton Manning. Do you know their only quarterback endorser? It's Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan, old and busted, talking about guys you don't want to have throw picks. Matt Ryan threw 2 picks in the final 2 minutes to lose. So I think Baker Mayfield could have a new endorsement coming up, and I know what you're going to say.
He'd have no time.
Jenna only likes athlete endorsements if it's, you know, like Forrest Lamp and the Lamp, which she oddly loved but hates all of Baker's. And I know you're going to say that. And I'm going to say, guys, you're being unfair. Jenna's not anti-endorsement. She just has a vitriolic hatred for Baker Mayfield, but she likes Gatorade and working out so much. I think she might actually endorse Baker's endorsement
He just
of
has
Gatorade,
no
which I'm
time
trying
for
to help
any
him
more
get.
endorsements with all his other commercials.
This is what I'm trying to help him get.
Jenna likes
Endorsable.
Gatorade. Too much sugar. Zero chance. The sugar
Way too
content
much
in Gatorade
sugar.
too high for Jenna.
Yep.
That I knew it. I knew
Yes.
it.
I also went commercial
It's so
worthy, Jenna.
high.
I wanted to see a Christmas commercial from Baker because he was doing that Thanksgiving turkey commercial after Thanksgiving. I thought we had a Christmas commercial ready. But here's the thing. No, I'm going to talk real thing. That was just a commercial. I think the Browns should be super, super happy. If you look at their losses, Jenna, they lost. They scored 6 points, lost to Baltimore. They scored 7 points, lost to the Steelers. They scored 6 points, they lost to the Raiders. Then they scored 42 points. So I think the ascension of Baker does get him another commercial, Jenna.
Guys, I have no issue with the commercials. They're actually funny, except the Thanksgiving one. That one didn't hit. Doug Peterson finally did it, you guys. Doug Peterson finally came out and named Jalen Hurts the starting quarterback for Sunday's game in Arizona. He said, quote, after going through the film, I'm going to continue with Jalen this week. Somehow, Doug Peterson needed to go through film to come to that conclusion. So, Brandon, Doug Peterson naming Hurts the starter is blank.
Yeah, I'm going to be quick here. This one is duh with 3 U's. Look, we knew he was going to be the starter. He elevated this entire team. He gave you the spark that you asked for. I need a spark. I need a spark. He gave you a spark, and then the first thing out your mouth after the game is, I don't know if we're going to go back to him or Wentz. Please. This is duh with 3 U's, Nick.
Yeah, I'm going with a different perspective. And I mean that literally, your perspective of seeing the game. Because if you watch this press conference, Doug Peterson said, after watching the game tape, and this is something you hear from coaches all the time after a game, I got to go watch the game tape. And now I'm going to be fair. I've only ever watched one NFL game from the sidelines, and I don't quite remember it vividly. Maybe you just from the sidelines are seeing something totally different than all of us are seeing watching on television. It's like, how many guys are on the field? What color is my team's jerseys? Did we score? Did we give up a safety? Who knows? Gotta watch the film. Because folks that weren't on the sideline watched this game and was like, oh, Jalen's the starter. But Doug Peterson needed a different perspective. He needed to actually watch the tape, and he's like, oh, Jalen's the starter. So I'm glad he got there eventually, Wilds, and maybe Doug Peterson should watch all the games like on a 4-second delay on video, and he can maybe make some better in-game adjustments accordingly, because he needed to watch the game tape to figure out that Jalen's the starter.
Yeah, I went with methodical. I guess he's trying to score points like, yeah, I watched the game tape, and now Jalen's obviously the starter. So, Jenna, I just felt like this was the most obvious thing. And I'm honestly, felt like I was being too mean to Doug Peterson. I'm trying to be nicer. So I put methodical there. I'm not, it's part of my New Year's resolution.
You know what the bummer is? The bummer is we're not going to have any more of those awkward moments in press conferences now that he named Jalen Hurts, but we will be okay. On to Houston now. Texans need a head coach. Texans need a general manager. Texas needs some wins and some new life. They do have a franchise quarterback, though, and owner Cal McNair is reportedly consulting with said quarterback, Deshaun Watson, on possible head coach candidates to fill the opening. Brandon, the Texans consulting with Deshaun Watson on their next head coach is blank.
Wise, Jenna. This is really wise. The most important player on the field is the quarterback. The most important piece on a team is the quarterback, whether you like it or not. So getting his perspective, he doesn't have to have the ultimate say or, a real decision in the matter. A big, when it comes down to the decision, but you should get his opinion. This means a lot. This relationship between quarterback, offensive coordinator, and head coach is extremely important. If it's not properly aligned, then you're not going to win any games. This is wise.
Well, I agree with you, Brandon, and I wonder what the decision-making process for Cal McNair was like. He's like, well, I could talk to Deshaun Watson, the highest-paid player in the history of my franchise, best quarterback in the history of my franchise, future of my franchise, or knocking on my office door is this homeless man's Joel Osteen, Jack Easterby, who seems to all of a sudden think he knows how to run a football team. Who should I talk to? I'm glad he went with door number one. My answer is Chiefs South. It's very simple. Hire Eric Bieniemy as your head coach. Hire John Dorsey as your general manager. John Dorsey helped build the Chiefs into what they are now. He's available. Eric Bieniemy has learned under Andy Reid for probably 2 years longer than he needed to. He'll be available. You will go from Bill O'Brien, the head coach, and Bill O'Brien, the GM, to a real live head coach and a real live GM. Just try to go be the Chiefs South. That's my recommendation, Wilds.
Okay, well, they tried Patriots South and it didn't work. Here's a take, Nick. I'm not sure Eric Bieniemy wants to go to...
No, they're not. Okay, you got one Super Bowl in the last 50 years.
Don't need to cheat.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if Eric Bieniemy wants to go.
Let's be honest.
All right, I lost. Katana, play that back. I couldn't hear it over the jingle jangle of
Yeah,
my
now you know how I feel, Wilds.
So send me the text. I'm sorry. I don't know if Eric Bieniemy wants to go to the Texans. With all the reports coming out of the Texans, maybe if the GM comes with him, that'll be a little bit different, Nick. But if I'm Eric Bieniemy, I think it's like a Ty Lue situation. You got like multiple teams want you. So I think I just sit back and be like, maybe the Texans. Maybe I don't like all these news reports coming out of there. But here's the thing about Deshaun Watson. The guy is very loyal. So I want to play the quote of him talking about Bill O'Brien. So it gives him a lot of power, but I wonder how much of this is lip service paid to Deshaun Watson, because he obviously wanted to keep Bill O'Brien at least last year. Take a listen.
You guys, no doubt. I mean, you might have doubt, but there's no doubt. I mean, I love that man. I'm going to play hard for that man. And y'all can say whatever y'all want to say, through all the media and all the writing, but as long as I'm at quarterback, he's cool with me. He's got my heart. He's going to get all my 110% every time I step on that field. So y'all can say whatever, but I'm going to always be rooting for that man and going to play hard for him. So.
Wilds, and Bill O'Brien paid that forward by trading away DeAndre Hopkins for him. It's great. Way to pay that loyalty forward, Bill O'Brien. And by the way, America, I don't know if you literally heard the jingle jangle Wilds was talking about, but that was all the asterisks banging together in his pocket, not championship rings for the rings.
He's got more lines where that came from, Wilds.
I only have one. They're ornament asterisk.
The NFL gifting us with the game of the year last night. Ravens-Browns and about 1,000 storylines woven in. We'll have that for you next. First things first.
They're like spurs on cowboy boots, Wilds.
Back here talking NBA. Let's head to Brooklyn now. Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant getting on the same page this preseason. Last week, Kyrie said he's not talking to the media this season and was subsequently fine. And then all of a sudden, Kyrie found some time to talk to the media. I wonder what changed. Here's Kyrie with more.
Having disappointing seasons the last few years hasn't necessarily been the best reflection that I wanted to put out, but it's a different show. It's a different stage, and it's a new beginning in terms of what we're building and moving forward with the pieces we have here. And that includes 7-Eleven, so get to know us.
Let's go.
All right, Chris Broussard is joining us now. Broussard, good morning. There's a lot here with these two guys. There's the team, there's the hype, but let's start with this duo. What's more likely, do you think, for KD and Kyrie and the Nets this season? An NBA title or, let's call it, or disaster?
Well, Jenna, if the question was an NBA Finals appearance or disaster, I would go with NBA Finals appearance. I do think this Nets team can be the second best team in the league. I don't see them beating the Lakers. I think the Lakers are just superior. Now, I'd be foolish to sit here and say there's not a reasonable chance of disaster. With Kyrie's history of injuries, with his history of locker room issues with teammates, with his history of making bizarre and odd comments, there's certainly a chance of disaster. Heck, now that he thinks he's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and wants to post up 8 times a game, you have to leave open the door for disaster. However, I heard 3 things yesterday that made me optimistic about this Nets team having success. 1, Kyrie did speak to the Pawns in the media, and he was calm and relaxed and comfortable. Number 2, he took back his statement from months ago about the Nets not needing a head coach, and he gave Steve Nash the respect he deserves. Number 3, when he unveiled the new nickname, 7-11, I like that nickname, even though it's just kind of a glorified bodega, but still, it's a great nickname. 7-11, notice, Kyrie is second. Okay, Durant, number 7, is first. Nets fans have to hope that means Kyrie understands the pecking order. KD number 1, I'm number 2.
Sorry.
So look, I'm going to say the Nets have a better chance of being Eastern Conference champions than they do of having a disaster.
Wild
that's a very
take
interesting take. It's also not the question. The question is title, not Eastern Conference title. It's NBA title or disaster. I think it's also important to define disaster. Would you agree that anything short of a conference finals appearance would be a disaster? If they have the same playoff run the Clippers did last year, that would be a disaster for this team, right? If they're in the second round and out, given the expectations, because I think that would be a disaster for them. Go ahead, and then I'll give my take.
I think I'll say quickly, I think it would obviously be a disappointment, but disaster depends on how it ends. If it ends, if they finish losing the second round because Kyrie's caused problems or Durant and Kyrie didn't get along, that's a disaster.
It's all different.
But if they could lose in a way where in the next year you're optimistic and think, okay, it just took a year to get it together, they'll do that.
So here's my real concern for the Nets. I think they are going to be very, very similar to last year's Mavs. An absolutely unstoppable offense that can't stop anybody on the other end. And when you look at the East, Milwaukee, a great defense. Boston and Philly, very, very good defenses. I think Toronto's going to take a step back, but they were the number 2 defense in basketball last year. Miami, a very good defense. By the way, I just listed 5 teams, plus the Nets. 2 of those teams, forget round 2, are going out in round 1. That's just the math. And so I think the defense is going to be a work in progress at best, which Brandon puts such a massive weight on the shoulders of Kevin Durant. Now, I think Kevin Durant can walk back into the league and be the second best player in basketball. I think he can. I need to see it, but I think he can. But as we've talked about, there's being a great player, and then there's also the leadership part. And I think KD can be a great leader, but he hasn't had to be a leader in nearly 5 years. He was never the leader in Golden State because that wasn't his role. So he's got to be the leader. He's probably got to be their best defensive player as well as their best offensive player. And he's coming off an Achilles. It's just a massive weight on Durant's shoulders, Brandon, going into this year. So my answer would be it's more likely they don't make a conference finals than they win the NBA title.
Well, I have them winning the title this year. So the answer for me is NBA title because of their chemistry. Now, a lot of people don't understand it. It's weird. It's one of those things where you see a couple and it's like, man, why are they together? It just seemed like the odd couple, and it's like it just works for them. It works for these guys. You go back to everything you talked about, Chris. One of the things that KD said was, look, we agreed on 2 to 3 post-ups. And you have to check with me. He established who is leading this thing from the beginning. So I love to hear that. Let's not forget how prolific both of these guys were before the shutdown and also before they got hurt. These are two of the most prolific scorers in NBA history. The game is about scoring the basketball right now. There's only 2 or 3 teams that really play good defense. You got the Lakers, you can throw out the Heat, maybe you put it the Milwaukee Bucks, and maybe one other team. But this is not about defense, this is about offense. For those reasons, I'm going with NBA title. I want to show you guys this as well, just to double down on this point. 25 points per game, 45% from the field, 35% from 3, 85% from the line. This is the list right here. That's Kevin Durant, Kevin Durant, Kevin Durant, Kevin Durant. There's nobody else on this list. This is probably the best scorer the league has ever seen. He'll take them to the title, 100%.
Yeah. It's a bold claim. I'm going to give them a year with the condensed schedule, Broussard, and I think Steve Nash is going to limit both Kyrie and Durant's minutes. I think you made a lot of good points in one wild point. The fact that they named themselves 7-11 because Kyrie has put himself in the second position because that was the pecking order of sort of usage rate rather than just it has a good ring to it. I'm going to give you a chance here to walk that back and acknowledge that he's just making it a brand statement of, hey, it's 7-11. We're always open. More so than it is a wink towards the usage rate plan for the Brooklyn Nets this year. Go ahead, Broussard.
Well, I must admit, if the name was 11-7, he probably would go with 11-7. I get you on that. But I do think that he has a respect. And I know he respect. You can't help but respect LeBron James, okay? However, I think Kyrie has more of a respect for Kevin Durant's game. I might be wrong, but I think he has more of a respect for Kevin Durant's skills than he has for LeBron's. I think he looks at Durant as, I mean, this dude is 7 feet tall, wildly, I mean, as Brandon said, he's arguably the best scorer we've ever seen. Look at what he can do. And whereas LeBron obviously was tremendously skilled or is, I think you can also say in Kyrie's mind, well, he's so big too and fast and athletic, whereas Durant is strictly just straight up skilled. And I think Kyrie has huge respect for that. So I think that bodes well for their chemistry. Yes, 17.
All right, let's play a little in or out, guys. James Harden joined Rockets practice on Monday, finally. Still reportedly is pushing for a trade. Unmoved, uninterested in a pairing with John Wall. Broussard, back to you. You in or out on James Harden being on the Rockets when the season starts? The shorts.
Oh, I'm in on this. Unless Philadelphia decides they want to trade Ben Simmons before the season, which is not going to happen, Harden will be a Rocket. If I'm Houston, look, I'm saying let's get James in here. Let him see how good John Wall is. Wall is not as good as Westbrook, but he is a more skilled player, and I think Harden will recognize and respect that. Let's let him see Boogie Cousins, who's got something to prove and actually looks, the few preseason games like he's still got his skills about him. Eric Gordon, PJ Tucker, like this team has talent. It's just a matter of bringing it together. So I am giving that a chance to work with James Harden. And even if Harden doesn't eventually buy in and say, you know what, I'm cool staying here in Houston, all it will do is up his trade value and your ability to get more for him if he's a good soldier.
Yeah, I think even if John Wall comes back, the best version of John Wall we've ever seen, I still don't think Harden is changing his opinion on wanting to get out of Houston, but I also think he starts the season in Houston. You saw the report yesterday. Houston wants Ben Simmons and 3 first-round picks. I think this thing's going to get done for Ben Simmons, 1 first-round pick, and a pick swap. I think that's how this thing's going to happen. But I don't think it's going to happen in the next week. The NBA season starts 1 week from today, so I don't think it happens in the next week, Jenna. I think so he starts the season as a Rocket, but he certainly does not make it to the deadline as a Rocket.
I'm pushing for those short shorts when the season starts. Let's get back to our top story. You couldn't ask for more out of a Monday night game. Let's talk about where Baker and the Browns now stand after this one. First things first, it's next. Broussard, as always, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
It's the 2020 TSL Football Championship as the Aviators, that's Wild's team, takes on the Generals for the title tonight, 7 Eastern, only on FS1 and the Fox Sports app. We learn more and more about you, Wilds, every single day. Check it out. All right, time now for a Prime Performance, sponsored by Whole Food Market, your go-to for all things holiday and everything else, let me just say. Talking a Monday Night Thriller in Cleveland, Ravens, Browns, Lamar versus Baker. This one had everything, 3 touchdowns and an incredible ground game from Lamar. 3 touchdowns and a great passing performance from Baker. Then Lamar left, came back with cramps. It came down to a last-second Justin Tucker field goal for the win. Literally, this game had everything. Ravens take it. They get the win. They're now 8-5 and very much still in this playoff on Tiers head coach John Harbaugh after the win.
With all the things that went on in this game, the timing, like you're talking about, of that right there. I mean, if you wrote a movie about this, people wouldn't believe it. They would say it could never happen. Reality is stranger than fiction, or whatever that saying is. That's kind of what it is here. I mean, it's crazy.
All right, so Nick, let me ask you, who had the more impressive night? That guy right there, Baker Mayfield, or Lamar Jackson?
To me, it's very, very clear that Baker was the best player on the field last night. I thought Lamar showed once again that he is the greatest, with respect to Michael Vick, who everyone knows how much I adore. Lamar is going to go down in history as the greatest rushing threat ever at the quarterback position. And last night, the Browns had no answers for him there. But in the first 3.5 quarters, before he came back from the locker room, his passing game was one of the worst he's had all year, in a year where he hasn't been good passing the football. He had 6 completions for 80 yards in the first 3.5 quarters, and I know he only had 11 attempts, but 2 of those attempts were on consecutive plays when the game was still in the balance, guys running wide open, and he just missed them, particularly the second of the 2. I think it was to Mark Andrews for a touchdown, just missed him. Then Lamar, when he came back, was perfect. He made the absolute winning play on 4th and 5 with the game on the line. And then when they got the ball back, he made the right plays to set up the Justin Tucker field goal. So it's not like Lamar was bad, but throwing the football, I thought he was really shaky in the until the very end. Baker, on the other hand, against a team that they started the year against and got absolutely destroyed by, carved them up all game, and made one mistake, snapping his streak of 187 attempts without an interception, the longest streak in the NFL at that point. How did he respond to that? With 3 fourth-quarter touchdowns, including a go-ahead touchdown, and the game-tying touchdown with a minute left, or that he scored with a minute left, that actually left the Ravens too much time. He scored it too fast, only took him 47 seconds. So the question to me, Brandon, surrounding the Browns all year long has been, how good is Baker going to be? We know the defense has a great pass rush. We know they have a great rushing attack. How good can Baker be? And last night, I thought he was extraordinary against what is supposed to be an excellent defense. And so I thought Baker was far and away the most impressive guy on the field last night.
Yeah, I thought both of those guys were impressive. Both of those guys were phenomenal. They just got it done differently. Lamar Jackson got it done on the ground. Baker Mayfield got it done through the air. Baker Mayfield, leading up to the game, I thought he did a phenomenal job, not creating any distractions, any bulletin board materials. He's been doing that all year, trending in the right direction. During the game, I thought his poise, his demeanor, his moxie was right there where it needed to be. I mean, it was off the charts. He played well. After the game, his demeanor, his leadership, how he handled the press conference, phenomenal job. But to answer the question, it's really Lamar Jackson. This guy won an MVP doing it the way he did it last night. I mean, that's what we saw. We saw retro Lamar Jackson. We haven't seen that all year, for him to literally do whatever he wanted there. We know why Lamar Jackson isn't putting up 200, 300 yards. We've been talking about it all year. It's Greg Roman. You go back and you can study Greg Roman and Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick took his team all the way to the Super Bowl. And what happened after that? How did Colin Kaepernick go from one of the best football players on the field in the league, one of the faces of the NFL, all over the place? Every brand wants to sign him, to being out on the outs in 49ers, in San Francisco. How? Because Greg Roman wasn't able to develop the passing game. Now, was there question marks around this kid coming in to the NFL? 100%. But this kid can absolutely get it done. They just need to tweak some things when it comes to their passing game. That's what they need to do. Now, look, coming down to the end, both of those guys stood up and made the plays they needed. But when you look at it, if I'm sitting in this locker room today and I'm breaking down film, I'm looking at, all right, well, the Baltimore Ravens, the defense, like, you guys gave up how many points? Like, this is a defense that's supposed to be one of the better defenses in the National Football League. They haven't shown up in the last 6-7 weeks. And then if I'm in the Cleveland Browns locker room and I'm sitting in those meetings, I'm looking at them like, look, defensively, I'm not high on you guys because you guys gave up 47 points. That's a problem. And then you look at the offensive side. Kevin Stefanski did a phenomenal job. Like, this dude is super creative. And you really have to nitpick on why they didn't get the job done. And if you really want to talk about it, it is that pick. They ran the ball well, but the biggest question mark around that offense last night was him making this terrible throw. This was terrible. Like, we can talk about Baker Mayfield all we want, how great of a job he did throughout the entire game, what he did after this. But it comes down to these moments in games. These games are decided by 2 or 3 points. That's what these games are decided by in the National Football League. You can't make these mistakes in critical moments. So this is the reason why they lost this game, a big reason why.
All right, Brandon, I want to go back to one thing you said there, that the Ravens need to tweak their passing game. Well, how much of it is a tweak and how much of it is crumble it up and throw it away? Lamar completed 11 passes, and granted he was out of the game for a little while, so we'll take that time out. But, like, it's just 10 more passes than Jarvis Landry had. And even the plays that were super successful, there was an element of play breakdown with him making something happen. So, like, when he had that big pass to Mark Andrews and Mark Andrews got open, the broadcast, like, oh, here's his safety valve, here's his security blanket. He held the ball, he scrambled for 24 yards according to NFL Next Gen stats. To me, I know they end up working, but it still gives me pause to say, like, this is our plan, and it's a little bit like Captain Sully. And this is not Captain Sully slander, Nick. I would never do that. You guys got a great mustache.
Wait for it.
But when Captain Sully lands the plane in the Hudson River, you look at it and say, wow, amazing performance. But at the same time, like, not ideal, not the ideal plan of how we wanted to attack the flight. I think, like, it's out, and so Lamar deserves all the credit, but there's an element of, like, emergency scramble and stress in the game that doesn't make me feel like it's his MVP season. It makes me feel like the Ravens are winning games despite or in spite of Greg Roman's play calling and Lamar Jackson making things happen on his own.
Yeah, I mean, I like to peel back the layers. I don't like to just have these conversations in a vacuum. I want to know why Lamar Jackson is the way he is. I want to know why Baker Mayfield is the way he is. So when you look at Lamar Jackson, you know, if you want to figure out, like, you know, if this team is committed to throwing the ball, if they're good at throwing the ball, look at first down. They're number 1 in the league at running the ball on first down. Now let's look at this game. What did they open up the game with, right? Like, Greg Roman hears this. They've been talking about it internally. They've had some tough discussions in that locker room about what this identity needs to be. So they hear it. And guess what? They open up this game with a pass. But what kind of pass? A flea flicker. That's what they did. No, not a stretch, boot right, keep right, throw, have a crosser, someone in the flat, someone on the 18-yard comeback. They didn't do that. They didn't go fundamentals. They didn't go double stick, dragging on the backside. They didn't do that. They didn't go double go, just take a shot, set the tempo. What they did is they came out with a flea flicker. That's what Greg Roman did. So to answer your question, they need to crumble it up and throw it out.
Yeah, okay. And I get that, but there were a few plays that I assume Greg Roman called that I mentioned earlier where guys were running wide open, and he did call a pass play, and Lamar missed him. Like, some of this has to be, and I love Lamar, some of this has to be that he has not evolved as a passer quite to the degree I think most of us, myself included, thought he would after his MVP season. And his MVP season, he was obviously the super dynamic dual threat, but he threw for 35 touchdowns and over 200 yards per game. That's not happening so far this year. But I want to circle back to Baker. The question surrounding
before you go to Baker, let me ask you a question. Before you go to Baker, let me ask you a question really quick. All right, can a shooter get better at shooting the ball if he doesn't shoot the ball?
No.
Okay, it's the same thing with Lamar Jackson. He threw 16 times yesterday. A quarterback needs to get in the rhythm. You can't call a quarterback, hey, let's throw the ball now. We've been running it all quarter, and we expect you to win it with your arm. You got to develop this in practice, and you got to develop this in games. Shooter can't get better shooting the ball if he doesn't shoot. A passer can't get better throwing the ball if he doesn't throw the ball.
That's fair, but I guess I would wonder if in practices, if the shooter is missing a lot of open shots, if that's why the coach is not drawing up plays for him to shoot a bunch of shots. I'm not there at the practices, I don't know, but if Lamar is just cutting them up, dissecting them with precision, and they are still running just this offense, then obviously it's a major Greg Roman problem. But I do want to say something about Baker. The question surrounding Baker as of 9 days ago was, how are you going to do against the better teams, and how are you going to do if the defense doesn't carry you? And against Tennessee,
that's right,
he had the best half of football any quarterback has had statistically against any team all year in beating a really good Titans team. And last night, even though they didn't get the win, his team scored 42 points. He had 3 fourth-quarter touchdowns. By the way, it's the second time this year he's had 3 fourth-quarter touchdowns to either tie or take the lead in the final 2 minutes. The only quarterback to be able to say that.
That was the conversation.
And he put them in position to win the game. So I just feel like there has to be some, even in the loss, respect for what Baker is doing.
No, you lost the game. You lost the game. The conversation 9 days ago when they played against the Tennessee Titans was, if you win the game, number one, throw for over 250 yards, we will put respect on your name. There's 2 big things there. You need to get a win. We also highlighted that he's going against the 28th ranked passing defense and the 31st ranked defense getting pressure on the quarterback. Of course he's supposed to do that. He didn't get a win. We can respect him all we want. He played well, but he didn't get the win. That was the conversation 9 days ago, Nick. You're right. You're right.
I think if you're a Browns fan,
that you missed out,
you feel better this morning with this loss than if they had won the game 10-7 because of what Baker showed.